Hello, and thank you for joining us today, wherever you may be. Welcome to the launch of the IEA's World Energy Employment 2025 report, a clear look at the energy jobs globally and the evolving skills shaping the industry's future. I'm Oliver Joy, Communications Manager at the International Energy Agency. I'm delighted to say that we're joined by the IEA's Executive Director, Dr. Fatih Birol, today, and the IEA's Director of Sustainability, Technologies and Outlooks, Dr. Laura Cosi, and IEA's Head of Energy Efficiency and Inclusive Transitions, Dr. Brian Motherway. The full report, we should say, is freely available on the IEA website, and we encourage you to download it and explore its analysis in full. A quick word about how proceedings will run today. We will begin with opening remarks from Dr. Birol. Following that, Laura and Brian will present the key findings of the report, and after the presentation, we will move to a question and answer session from journalists. And for those journalists participating today, please submit your questions about the report at any time using the Q&A Zoom function. You can do this through the presentation, and afterwards we will go to a short pause following any final questions that can come in. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand over to the IEA's Executive Director, Dr. Birol.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon to all the colleagues who are following this very meeting. So greetings to all of you from the IEA headquarters in Paris. Dear colleagues, at the IEA, being the global energy authority, we look at all fuels, all technologies: oil, gas, coal, solar, wind, nuclear power, all of them, and more than 600 technologies for the energy sector. We track their developments, what is happening there, and not only how much they are consumed, how much they are going to produce energy, we look at the different aspects of energy, such as investment, for example, but also a topic which we believe doesn't get the attention it deserves. We look at the employment issue, and this is the fourth edition of this report. We are going to share with you the World Energy Employment Report 2025, and we look at across the energy sector, energy jobs. Is there a demand or is less of a demand, and which part of the energy sector we are facing shortages, and what are the consequences of that? And finally, what needs to be done? So I am thankful to my colleagues, Laura Cosi and Brian Motherway, who are going to elaborate some of the findings. But my also thanks go to the lead authors, Dan Wetzel and Jane Cohen, and the entire team working and putting this report together in connection with the several companies, energy companies around the world, as well as the trade unions of the energy sector. So, dear colleagues, when I look at the report, I find a lot of interesting issues, but perhaps I start with the good news. In the energy world nowadays, sharing good news is not a daily practice, but I want to start with the good news. Good news is jobs growth in the energy sector is very strong, about 2.2% last year. And it is, when you compare with the global employment records, it is 2 times faster than the global jobs growth. So this is a good news, I guess, for the energy sector, which makes me happy as an energy person. And in some countries, the jobs for energy has been a driver for the global jobs growth. In China, for example, in the last 3 years, 1 out of 5 new jobs came from the energy sector. And similarly, in the United States, about 1 out of 10 new jobs came from the energy sector. So highlights that the jobs is the energy is a job creating machine, for the economies around the world. Of course, this work we are doing, this report we are doing, is very much in connection with some of the other findings, and it confirms from a different angle our findings. For example, the one, Laura, we recently here together published or released our World Energy Outlook. And in the World Energy Outlook, one of the main findings was the age of electricity is coming. Electricity demand is growing very strongly. And when I look at this report's finding, World Energy Employment, it does fully confirm the finding of the World Energy Outlook, because the jobs which are very much in demand, number one is the electricians. So this is a good news for the electricians, and it is a good news for the electricity sector. And the number of jobs in the electricity sector today is exceeding all other fuels put together. So this is a new development that our colleagues tracking the numbers of the jobs added tells me that the electricity sector is today the number one sectors in terms of the employment when it is compared with all the other fuels put together. So these are definitely good news, but there is also the report gives also heads up to governments and to companies, as it says that in some parts of the energy sector we are seeing the bottlenecks of finding the right skills. And if you don't find the right skills, right employer, this has implications for the costs. Cost goes up. This may also lead to delay of the projects, which in turn not a good news for the companies or for the governments. As I said, the interest for the energy sector in some areas is less than the others. One area that I picked up when reading the report is the nuclear industry. And there is here there is a bit of a gap between what we expect, as I hear nuclear is making a comeback, but the interest in the nuclear sector for the jobs is rather weak. And what we also see is that the nuclear sector is the average age is increasing, it's aging. For every one person added to the nuclear sector, every new job, every new person, 1.7 person retires. So there is a gap coming there. So I would like to finish by saying that we work with all the energy ministries around the world, in Americas, in Europe, in Asia, Africa, and elsewhere. Of course, energy ministries, governments have many preoccupations when it comes to energy sector, such as energy security, affordability, competitiveness, how to bring the emissions down. They have many preoccupations, but we believe to find the right skills and have the right training and the right schools for the energy sector is not a peripheral challenge, but it is at the core of all these issues we mentioned. And our report, the aim of our report is highlight this issue, that there is a challenge for the energy sector and challenge for the governments, for the industry, for the companies, for the society in general. And I am also here thankful to our colleagues who work with us, cooperate with us from the industries. We made a lot of surveys with the different companies around the world, also trade unions with our Brian, with our Labor Council. We work with them, get their views across the world. And this is a unique contribution, in my view, to the global energy debate, highlighting one of the challenges we are facing. With this, I stop here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. Over to you, Laura,
Thank
Brian.
you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Birol. Thank you very much, Oliver. So as Dr. Birol mentioned, we are in the 4th edition of this World Energy Employment Report, and our core objective here is to put forward the most comprehensive facts and data on what's happening in the energy labor market across different type of works and across different geographies. So this year I invite you all to go and look at the report, as we have greatly enhanced the sectoral and geographic analysis, as well as we made huge effort to have more comprehensive data sets going even backwards in the past as much as possible, utilizing national statistics, and where those are not available, going to our industry correspondents to fill those gaps. So if we take a longer time perspective, what we can see is that basically up until the year 2020, the energy sector was very much behaving like a very mature industry and trailing the growth that we were witnessing in terms of employment in the global economy. Then we saw a major shift post-2020 with very large investments coming in manufacturing, in construction, that have actually started to see first energy being on par with the global economy in terms of rate of new jobs. And then we can confirm now that for 2 years, 2023 and 2024, the number of growth in jobs that we are seeing in the energy sector is twice as large than that in the global economy. What has been the key determinant here, you can see it here, is very clearly the power sector, the electricity sector, very much driven by very strong construction in new power plants and to a lesser extent grids. So basically, very staggering number, 3/4 of job additions seen in the energy sector since 2019 are in the electricity sector, very much confirming what we have been saying now for the past several months about the age of electricity also being confirmed in the jobs numbers. If we take again an historic perspective, we had around 65 million workers across the entire energy supply chains, and today there are around 76 million workers. Our early data for 2025 also show that there is going to be a further increase in jobs globally in the energy sector, although to a more muted extent than in 2024, reflecting some of the tight labor markets that we will be exploring in a second, and a tapering off in investments. So as an eye-bird view here, you can see very clearly again that the electricity sector is what has really been pulling up the energy labor force over the past 4 to 5 years. But if we look a bit more in details, the oil and gas sector has been historically the largest job creator and largest job force in the energy sector. And what we have been seeing is that after a contraction seen in 2020, we are now nearly back at 2019 levels, with job hires occurring especially in national oil companies in the emerging world, being the Middle East, Latin America, to a lesser extent Africa, while IOCs have increased the job force, but with a more muted hiring spree. Coal, that in this graph seems rather stable, is actually hiding very interesting dynamics. Coal jobs remain very heavily concentrated in Asia, and what we have been witnessing is actually that China has seen a declining workforce in the coal mining sector, mostly due to very large labor productivity gains that have led to a contraction of around 400,000 jobs since 2019. This has been more than offset by growth in coal jobs in India, in Indonesia, where the labor productivity has really lagged behind what we have seen in other parts of the world. We have seen also growth for what concerns fluid supply in low-emission fuels, mostly biofuels, with increasing blending mandates having created a boost in production and jobs in Brazil, Indonesia, and others. Now, critical minerals looks very small there, but since 2019, this workforce has increased 25%, being one of the most dynamic areas that we are witnessing in the energy sector. Now, very clearly, what you see is the power sector pulling up the growth. In particular, solar. Solar has been the largest contributor to the growth, with over 2 million jobs added, mostly for solar installers. And this has led, in 2024, for the first year, the power sector having more employee than the overall fuel supply. I'll come back in a second to the grids and storage part that is increasing modestly, not because we don't need those occupations, but because we are really facing important bottlenecks. If we look at vehicles, you can see very clearly that the numbers have stalled, with two very distinct trends: a decline in workers for conventional engine and an increase in workers that are related to EVs, and the batteries productions related to EVs. An important point to note is that 70% of the jobs that are related to vehicle creation are what we would call drivetrain agnostic, but as there is a geographic shift in where vehicles are produced, we are also witnessing a shift in this type of works. And finally, on efficiency, the buildings part of efficiency is seen as growth in occupation. Maybe a couple of interesting stories to highlight here is what concerns very efficient lighting. Here, maybe worth mentioning what we have seen in India, with a large new labor force actually being very actively pushed by the government into big programs on changing towards more efficient lighting, but also some growth in buildings efficiency and heat pump installer. If we look at the view by regions, basically all regions of the world actually saw a growth in jobs. If you look at the past decade, most of the new jobs are located in the emerging world, with over 3 million new jobs located in China, nearly 2 million jobs, new jobs in India, but also the US, 500 million new jobs, Europe, 350,000 new jobs. So very, very distributed growth around the world. In the efforts of providing more granular information, we actually have looked at occupations, and there is an important characteristic that we need to bring to light about the energy sector vis-à-vis the overall economy. So applied technical workers in the energy sector, here we are talking about technicians, plant operators, assemblers, represent half, so 50% of the entire energy workforce. This is obvious, it's because of the nature of the energy sector, but it's important to highlight that this is twice as large as the global, as the average for the global economy. So this is also the part, this type of occupations are the ones that are actually driving up the energy needs, and they are at the same time the ones for which we are seeing serious shortages and bottlenecks. We have gone and asked over 700 from utilities to energy companies, but beyond universities and also trade unions, to understand where are the labor shortages and where are the most difficult areas of the energy sector where we find new jobs. And you can see there, I think it's important to highlight the grids part, because we are talking with operators, and the labor shortages is the one that is one of the key ingredients why we are not seeing grids ramp up as it should. Dr. Birol mentioned also in the engineering field, nuclear field engineers, chemical and process engineers are also in shortages, but it's quite widespread, to the point that 45% of the companies we surveyed reported the need to, on the one hand, needing expanding internal training programs to make sure that there are the right occupational skills within the sector, and on the other hand, highlighting that those shortages are having real impacts either on project delays, either higher costs and longer lead time. I pass the work now to Brian to expand on these issues.
Thank you very much, Lara. And so when we think about the workforce for energy for today and for the future, we are facing really a three-pronged challenge right now. First of all, we need to address ongoing shortages across many parts of the energy sector. Secondly, we need to replace growing cohorts of retirees. And thirdly, we need to meet additional job demand as the energy sector continues to grow around the world. Now, the energy workforce is growing and aging faster than the wider economy, particularly in advanced economies. In advanced economies, for every young entrant coming into the energy workforce today, there are about 2.4 workers nearing retirement on average. Some sectors feature this even more highly, and as Dr. Birol mentioned, one is nuclear energy, another is electricity grids, and these have already today larger proportions of older to younger workers. These are particularly important sectors, as we know, for our energy systems of today and of tomorrow, and we need those workforces in terms of maintaining energy security, preparing the energy systems of the future. Our analysis shows that this problem risks actually worsening in the future as demographic shifts continue around the world. In 2035, for example, for every 3 people hired into the energy sector, 2 of them will simply be replacing retiring workers. This has major implications not only for our energy systems, but also for our education systems. And how we prepare to have sufficient qualified workers coming into the energy sector of the future is a key issue that we explore in this report. Now, as you've heard, of particular importance to the energy sector are workers who require formal vocational education and qualifications, the kind of disciplines that Lara was just talking about, be it electricians, pipe fitters, people working in grids, people working in construction. All of these are absolutely central to the energy workforce. And these kinds of workers are going to be increasingly needed to install and maintain energy infrastructure. A well-qualified, well-skilled workforce is needed to deliver the rollout of energy systems in themselves, but also to determine its success. Because if poor qualifications or insufficient skills are leading to poor results, be it in grids or in industry or in buildings, or if families are investing in heat pumps that are badly installed or poorly maintained, then of course this undermines all of our energy goals. However, in the last decade, qualification rates for these workers have not kept pace with employment demand across the board. When we look at the relevant sectors such as construction, manufacturing, mining, utilities, between 2015 and 2022, the demand for applied technical workers across these sectors with energy-relevant qualifications grew by 16% in total. But in the same period, the qualification rates only grew at about half that pace. This trend is contributing to hiring difficulties across the broader economy, but the energy sector in particular is set to experience increasing shortages unless action is taken. The combination of rates of retirement and the expected job creation rates in the energy sector will continue to push up energy demand at a significant pace in the coming years. In fact, to prevent shortages from worsening, energy-relevant qualification rates will need to rise by 43% by 2030. And where policy ambition accelerates, this number would be even higher. Of course, there are many people who receive energy relevant qualifications who are not currently working in the energy sector. But it's not simply a matter of pulling such qualified workers from other sectors into the energy sector, because many of these sectors are also facing important shortages, and in many cases there's very severe wage competition. Therefore, in our view, attracting a larger number of people into energy relevant fields of study will have to be a very important part of the solution here. And the good news is that the total investment required to fund such an expansion represents only a tiny fraction of annual global spending on education. In fact, it's less than 0.1%. So as Dr. Birol mentioned and as Lara mentioned, in this work for the World Energy Employment Report this year, we have not only gathered major new data sets and explored the numbers right across the board, but we've also engaged in very extensive conversations with businesses, with employers, with workers, with trades unions, with education institutes. And we are very grateful to all of our partners who helped us really understand the current dynamics in the energy sector today in terms of employment. And in these discussions, for us, three important themes really emerged most strongly. Firstly, the importance of collaboration between stakeholders, between businesses and employees and trades unions, between educational institutes, governments, companies. Dialogue and collaboration is really important. Secondly, the importance of providing well-designed and accessible education and training, both for new workers coming into the sector, but also for existing workers who want or need to be reskilled as sectors change over time. And thirdly, of course, is the equality of jobs. What kind of jobs are being offered in the energy sector that may attract new workers and retain existing workers? And so our report highlights several key policy measures that we think are going to be really important for the success of this sector in the future. First of all, it's important that we are providing accessible training options, often with financial support, to make it possible for people to avail of these training and education options so that they're accessible to all, particularly to groups who may be underrepresented in the energy workforce today. For example, women make up less than 20% of energy workers today and less than 5% of the technical and vocational categories we have been focused on in this discussion. Secondly, the energy sector needs to offer attractive careers and be seen to offer attractive careers. And this demands actions such as engagements with schools, engagements with young people, career fairs, and all of the measures to make it visible to people the options they have in the energy sector. But of course, the jobs themselves need to be attractive. And in our conversations with companies and in our surveys of workers and trade unions, it's very clear that there are a number of dimensions of what makes a career and a job attractive. Of course, it's about rates of pay, but it's also about job security and future prospects. It's about working conditions, health and safety, and many other factors that we know will make a difference to ensuring that the young people are seeing that there are quality, decent jobs available to them to make their career in the energy sector. Another really important theme is the collaboration between educational institutes and industry itself, and of course government. And this includes providing work-based learning such as ongoing training and upskilling to workers as necessary. We really see that industry needs to be more engaged in these collaborations. According to our analysis, only 25% of firms today say that they are actually in any kind of dialogue with educational institutions. And we feel there's a real opportunity there for that to grow and for us to build a greater dialogue right across the board. Fourthly, it's really important that we're making sure that training is up to date and industry aligned. So many energy technologies are changing so quickly, there's so much innovation going on, and of course we see brand new areas opening up such as digitalization and artificial intelligence that will change the energy job landscape in many ways. It's important that the skills sector, that the education curricula and opportunities are fully up to date and making people ready to step into jobs immediately using the latest technologies and availing of the latest opportunities. And fifth and finally, I think it's really important, led by governments but with other partners, that we are continuing to undertake detailed labour market monitoring and skills mapping so that we really understand what is going on, and that's an essential step to ensure a future energy skilled workforce. So colleagues, in conclusion, this year's report shows strong and very encouraging growth in employment. This is good news, particularly driven by the oncoming age of electricity, which is something that the IEA has called in advance and, as Dr. Birol said, is really affirmed by the numbers and the strong growth in jobs today already being created in the electricity sector across the board. The energy sector is, we can clearly see in these numbers, is continuing to create large numbers of good job opportunities for people across the world. But we also see very clearly that if we want to meet the goals of our energy system, ranging from energy security to competitiveness to providing affordable and accessible energy to all, and of course addressing climate change, and if we want to make sure that the job opportunities the energy sector is offering are attractive and available to all, then we need to make sure that we are focusing now on the investment in skills and training and workforce development for the future. Thank you very much, and now I'll hand back to Oliver.
Thank you, Lara and Brian, for the excellent presentations. So, as mentioned, we now invite journalists and stakeholders to submit any remaining questions to the Zoom Q&A function. Please remember to include your outlet or your organisation there as well. We'll take a 2 to 3 minute short break now. See you soon. Welcome back, everyone. I'm delighted to say that our panel has expanded. The report leads, Dan Wetzel and Jane Cohen, are joining us for the Q&A. Thank you for everyone who has submitted their questions. We will take several at a time because we've had many, and we will go to the appropriate speaker. So we'll start with FT Sustainable Views. Can you say that the issue of labour shortages is at its worst since the IEA started tracking employment? And the second question from Thomson Reuters Foundation, we've been hearing about a skills gap for critical roles in clean energy development for several years. What needs to change to start fixing this? And can you point to any promising models? Dan, if I come to you for the first question, Jane.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that question. So with our energy employment survey, which we've been doing for several years, this year we had over 50% of the company respondents saying that critical labor shortages are leading to bottlenecks, rising costs, et cetera. This is a steady increase from the previous years in which we've done this survey. So we are seeing, at least from those companies in the energy space, this trend. Additionally, from the first slide that Lara presented, we do see a huge pivot in the energy space. From 2015 to 2019, we really saw energy as an established industry was growing slower than the wider economy, which is to be expected. But this huge uptick in investment across the energy sector from 2020 onward has really led to a tightening of this, where we're seeing lots of hiring, double the pace of the wider economy. And with this being 4 years consecutively of that, we're starting to see the strains. And this is something that came out in many of our discussions with companies. The one other piece of this equation that is important to note is post-pandemic, with the recovery in the economy, many economies are facing historic lows for their unemployment. So these labor markets have been very, very tight. So this is compounding specifically for these skilled trades positions. We've been talking a lot about electricians, construction workers. They're in shortage for the wider economy as well. And this is adding to the strains we're seeing specific to energy. Maybe over to Jane for the complementing portion of how do we solve this issue?
How do we solve it? Well, it's going to take both a short-term and a long-term policy approach, and we're seeing both of those in good examples all around the world. In terms of the longer-term approach, it's really important to align policy, and that's labor policy, it's industrial policy, it's energy policy, to make sure that these different groups are really able to collaborate on what is very much a kind of society-wide effort. And we're seeing really good examples of that in places like Spain, where Spain, for example, has had a real push on its industrial policy to make sure that it's very well aligned with its educational institutions and also its energy sector. And a big component of that has been working together with different stakeholders to make sure that other important components like mapping and understanding the skills that will be needed in the future are really, really well defined. And then in other places, we're seeing policy interventions for these more short-term and acute shortages. So we're seeing programs, for example, in Chile, which are really focused on retraining workers that are transitioning out of coal into transmission. And so it's really a combination of policies that target these sort of short-term acute skills need with the longer-term policies that can really build that educational capacity and build that pipeline that we're going to need going forward.
Thank you, Jane. So this is a stakeholder webinar as well as a press webinar, and we've had a couple of questions from organisations as well. First from the NL Foundation. Given that the growing shortage of skilled workers in addition to an ageing workforce in grids, what measures could be or should be prioritised to ensure timely delivery of grid modernisation projects? Perhaps Laura, I could come to you on that.
Thank you, Oliver. So I think that the question is well framed, because we are seeing really two things happening at the same time. Brian mentioned that we are seeing an aging workforce for the grids in particular. We are seeing for every person that comes into the job line, 1.4 are retiring. This is even worse in advanced economies where the number is 1 to 2. So we have to deal with this aging question, and at the same time, in particular for advanced economy, once again, we are talking about extension of grids, but also very much modernization and digitalization of those grids, which means that skills are changing. What we have been witnessing is the following, that to fix certainly the skill shortage problem, a lot of the utilities have come in providing sector-led apprenticeship. Now this can work, and it certainly has worked. We have seen examples in France, we have seen examples in Italy, but longer term, our data are very clear. This large increase of electricity use, large expansion of capacity needs to come with a ramp up in grids employment. Therefore, we do see a need to be a bit more structural in the approach. A government needed push on ensuring that credentials can be transferable, and certainly encouraging more and more young people. I think the female aspect has been touched upon already, especially young women, to come into the labor force to make sure that we have a more consistent and larger number of new people coming into the grid space.
Thank you, Lara. Yeah. And another one from the International Labour Organization. Brian, this one to you. This edition provides estimates for occupation level for the first time, as we understand. How can governments, workers, employers use these insights to shape coordinated skills strategies and for vocational education particularly, and reskilling?
Well, certainly for me, and I thank Jane and Dan and their teams for this, today's report brings us forward in a couple of ways. First of all, as you say, Oliver, we have much more granular data than ever before, so we have a much greater understanding of the good news, but also the challenges we face. Secondly, we really have opened this dialogue across the board, and certainly what we're hearing in all of our conversations is collaboration and dialogue are really central, whether it's in classic forms of social dialogue and employment or the kind of exchanges we have enjoyed having recently with the ILO, with the unions, with NL Foundation and all the partners. And I think that collaboration really needs to be fostered, because there's an understanding here that we're in a framing of opportunity, right? More jobs are being created in energy than ever before, and more jobs are going to be created. That's good news. But how do we make sure that we convert that into proper, good quality jobs for people who need them, for people in poorer regions, for women, for younger people, for people who may be seeing their existing job less secure than they would have liked. And so we need to make sure that all of these actors, governments, employers, employees, unions, educational institutions, act on the data that the IEA is putting into the field and make sure that we work together to frame that positively and deliver those positive gains. And that really depends on skilling up, putting the systems in place today. And as we said, it's not that expensive, and it's a great return on investment. Spend a little bit of money on skills and investment and create millions of really good quality jobs. But of course, we need a response from workers. We need a response from employers. These jobs need to pay well. They need to be secure. They need to have good conditions. Otherwise, people aren't going to go to them. But this is all opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, Brian. Very interesting. And we have run over a little bit, actually, so we are just going to take one final question here, and it wouldn't be an IEA webinar if we didn't talk about scenarios. So if we can touch on that, how many extra jobs in the energy sector will there be? And this is from Climate Home News. How many extra jobs in the energy sector will there be under a net zero scenario versus our current policies scenario? Dan, perhaps I can come to you for that.
That's super helpful. So thank you for that question. Maybe just for people coming to this new, we have about 76 million people working in these energy and energy-related spaces today. Under our CPS scenario, we see some of these strains on labor, slowing down the build-out of some of these key infrastructure. But between that scenario and our stated energy policies scenario, we see roughly around 5 million new jobs being added to 2035, with some small differences in the composition and the rate of growth in those. In the net zero scenario, which is aligned with 1.5 degrees of warming in the long term, what we actually see is around 15 million new jobs being added to 2035. So why the big increase? In that scenario, there's a much higher outlay of new investments and construction. And construction of new projects is the most intensive portion of the energy labor force today and represents almost 2/3 of the people working in energy today. And so that new construction, especially in the near term, is what drives that up. We recognize this is a very steep curve, and we've already flagged some of the challenges in ramping up education at that. But a good thing to put in perspective is many of these roles, we have a strong educational basis today because these are roles that are needed across many sectors. And so when looking at that composition of people in construction, manufacturing, assemblers, the total number of people who are educated in these, we would need a 5% increase going forward. So this is manageable, but it does point out the importance of looking across all the labor system to understand how energy surging ahead may have implications for other parts of the economy.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone for participating today and to our viewers. Just a reminder, the full report is available online, freely available. If we didn't get to your question, please contact our press office and we will do our best to respond as quickly as possible. And thank you again for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day.